Standing beneath the towering stones of the Great Pyramid of Giza, with the night sky stretched endlessly above, you might notice something extraordinary. The three colossal pyramids mirror the exact arrangement of Orion's belt, as if the heavens themselves were etched into the earth. But here's what's even more astonishing. This precise alignment isn't unique to Egypt. Thousands of miles away, in the jungles of Cambodia, the temples of Angkor Wat are arranged to mirror the constellation Draco. Across the Atlantic, the Mayans built Chichen Itza to capture the equinox sun in a serpent's descent. These aren't isolated coincidences, they're fragments of a forgotten science, a global language of stone and sky that connected ancient civilizations in ways we're only beginning to understand. What if I told you that these monuments scattered across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, were part of a vast, interconnected web of knowledge? A web where astronomy, mathematics, and spirituality intertwined so seamlessly that the very stones seem to whisper secrets to those who know how to listen. From the solstice-aligned slabs of Stonehenge to the celestial corridors of Machu Picchu, these structures weren't just built to impress. They were designed to communicate, to preserve, and perhaps even to awaken something deep within us. How did cultures with no known contact share such precise understanding? What hidden sciences did they master that we've since overlooked? This journey isn't just about decoding the past. It's about rediscovering a world where the Earth and cosmos were in constant conversation. Imagine a time when temples doubled as calendars, when pyramids served as gateways to the stars, and when every alignment held a key to something far greater than mere ritual. The secret sciences hidden inside these monuments challenge everything we think we know about ancient ingenuity. Were these builders guided by lost technologies, celestial prophecies, or a wisdom so profound it transcends time itself? As we unravel the mysteries of monument alignments across continents, prepare to see history and humanity in a light you've never imagined. The stones are speaking. Are you ready to hear what they have to say? The pyramids of Egypt don't just point north, they do so with an accuracy that rivals modern compasses, deviating by less than 1/15 of a degree. This isn't a quirk of construction, it's a fingerprint of intent. Across the globe, ancient builders achieved feats of precision that defy simple explanation. Take Teotihuacan in Mexico, where the Avenue of the Dead aligns with the setting sun on specific dates, or the temples of Luxor, where columns cast shadows to mark the solstices like a stone sundial. These alignments weren't decorative afterthoughts, they were the blueprint. What's staggering is the consistency. From the deserts of Egypt to the highlands of Peru, cultures with no known contact embedded identical principles into their monuments. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter, divided by twice its height, gives us pi, a mathematical constant also encoded in India's Vedic altars and Cambodia's Angkor Wat. How could societies separated by epochs and continents arrive at the same solutions? One theory suggests a lost progenitor civilization, a common teacher whose knowledge fragmented into the cultures we recognize today. Another possibility, these builders tapped into universal truths, natural rhythms of the cosmos that guided their hands independently. Consider the practical genius behind these alignments. The Mayans didn't just build Chichen Itza's El Castillo to awe visitors. They engineered it so the equinox sun would cast a shadow resembling the serpent god Kukulkan descending the steps. This wasn't spectacle, it was a functional calendar, a way to mark time with celestial precision. Similarly, Newgrange in Ireland channels the winter solstice sunrise into its inner chamber, flooding a tomb with light for exactly 17 minutes. These structures blur the line between architecture and astronomy, suggesting their creators saw the sky not as distant, but as a living part of their world. Yet the most compelling evidence lies in the margins of error, or rather, the lack of them. Modern engineers using GPS still marvel at how the Nazca lines in Peru maintain perfect geometric proportions across miles, or how Machu Picchu's terraces align with fractal patterns found in mountain streams. These aren't the results of trial and error. They're the products of a sophisticated science, one that understood Earth's curvature, celestial mechanics, and perhaps even energies we're only now rediscovering. The question isn't whether these alignments exist, it's why they're so eerily alike. Were ancient cultures communicating across oceans, or did they inherit fragments of a deeper, older wisdom? The stones hold clues, but the answers may lie in the spaces between them, in the silent language of alignment that turns monuments into messages. The night sky was more than a spectacle to ancient civilizations. It was their master architect. Across cultures, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Central America, builders looked upward to anchor their greatest creations in the cosmos. The Mayans didn't just observe the stars, they wove them into the very fabric of their cities. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo transforms during equinoxes into a serpent of light, a celestial event so precise it could set your watch. But this wasn't mere theater. The descending shadow of Kukulkan marked the arrival of planting season, a reminder that survival depended on reading the heavens. Egypt's temples tell a similar story. The Great Pyramid's air shafts align with Sirius and Orion, stars linked to rebirth in their mythology. At Karnak, the axis of the temple points to the winter solstice sunrise, bathing the inner sanctum in light when the sun was at its weakest, a symbolic victory over darkness. These weren't random acts of devotion. They were acts of engineering, blending spiritual meaning with scientific precision. Halfway across the world, the Nebra sky disk, buried in Germany over 3,000 years ago, maps the Pleiades and sun positions with gold inlay. It's the oldest known portable star chart, proof that even nomadic cultures carried the sky in their hands. Meanwhile, in Cambodia, Angkor Wat's central towers mirror the dawn sun during equinoxes, while its bas-reliefs depict Hindu creation myths as celestial maps. The same stars that guided Polynesian navigators across the Pacific also dictated the layout of Stonehenge, where heel stones frame the summer solstice sunrise like a stone telescope. What unites these monuments isn't just their astronomical accuracy, it's their shared language of symbolism. The serpent at Chichen Itza, the solstice light at Karnak, even the Pleiades on the Nebra disk, all speak of cycles, of life and death, planting and harvest, chaos and order. The stars weren't distant points of light, they were characters in a story written across the sky, a story these monuments were built to tell. Yet the most striking detail isn't the similarities, it's the differences. The Mayans tracked Venus for war, the Egyptians followed Sirius for floods, and the builders of Stonehenge monitored the moon's extremes. Each culture adapted celestial knowledge to their environment, proving this wasn't blind imitation but a deep, localized understanding. When the Inca built Coricancha in Cusco, lining its walls with gold to reflect sunlight into sacred spaces, they weren't copying Egypt. They were answering the same cosmic questions in their own voice. The real mystery isn't how they achieved these alignments, but why they mattered so universally. Perhaps the answer lies in the human instinct to seek patterns, to find meaning in the chaos of the night sky. These monuments are more than stone and shadow. They're humanity's first attempts to carve our place in the universe, to say, we saw the stars and they spoke to us. And thousands of years later, they still do. The Great Pyramid doesn't just dominate the skyline of Giza, it conceals a mathematical marvel in its very bones. Take its base perimeter and divide it by twice its height, and you'll arrive at a number eerily close to pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. This isn't a happy accident. It's a deliberate design choice, one that repeats in India's Vedic fire altars and Cambodia's temple complexes. But here's what's even more astonishing. The pyramid's slope angles encode the golden ratio, a proportion found in everything from seashells to galaxies, revered for its aesthetic harmony. How could builders without modern calculators grasp such abstract concepts? The answer might lie in the strings and shadows they used as tools, simple instruments wielded with extraordinary insight. Machu Picchu tells a similar story. Its terraces don't just cling to the mountainside, they mirror the fractal patterns of the Andes themselves, repeating self-similar shapes seen in river networks and branching trees. The Incas didn't just adapt to the landscape, they echoed its mathematical language. Even the trapezoidal doorways found from Peru to Easter Island aren't just architectural quirks. They distribute weight with an efficiency that modern engineers still study, proving these builders understood load-bearing physics long before the term existed. Then there's Angkor Wat, where the dimensions of its central tower reflect the same sacred geometry seen in Hindu mandalas, circles, squares, and triangles that symbolize cosmic order. The temple's layout isn't just grand, it's a scaled-down model of the universe, with moats representing oceans and towers standing in for sacred mountains. This isn't decoration, it's dimensionality, a way to compress infinity into stone. What ties these sites together isn't just their beauty, it's their shared mathematical grammar. The Mayans used the concept of 0 centuries before Europe, embedding it in their calendrical calculations. The Babylonians left behind clay tablets with Pythagorean triples, proving they knew the relationship between triangle sides long before Pythagoras. These aren't isolated flashes of genius, they're fragments of a system, a global numeracy that treated numbers not as abstractions, but as living forces. The real mystery isn't whether these cultures knew advanced math, it's how they applied it with such consistency. Did a single source disseminate this knowledge, or did disparate civilizations stumble upon the same truths independently? The sheer repetition of certain ratios like the golden ratio in Egypt's pyramids and Greece's Parthenon hints at something deeper than coincidence. Perhaps these numbers resonated because they're woven into the fabric of reality itself, a code our ancestors learned to read long before we invented the word science. Consider the practical implications. At Teotihuacan, the street of the dead aligns with celestial events, but its proportions also create perfect acoustic effects. Whispers travel unnaturally far along its length. The builders didn't just want you to see the sacred, they wanted you to hear it. This fusion of math and sensory experience suggests a holistic science, one where calculation and reverence were two sides of the same stone. The most compelling evidence, though, lies in the margins of error, or rather their absence. When modern surveyors mapped the Great Pyramid's corners, they found discrepancies of mere inches across its 700-foot base. Machu Picchu's stones fit so tightly that not even a credit card slips between them. This precision isn't just impressive, it's inexplicable without acknowledging a sophisticated tradition of measurement, one that treated perfection as the baseline. What if these monuments aren't just tombs or temples but textbooks? Their walls might hold not just prayers, but proofs, lessons in a language where numbers bridge earth and sky. The builders didn't carve random symbols, they left equations in stone waiting for us to solve them. Picture this, a straight line cutting across the English countryside, connecting Stonehenge, the ancient mound of Silbury Hill, and the mystical Tor of Glastonbury, a path invisible to the eye but etched into the landscape with eerie precision. These are ley lines, the enigmatic alignments that crisscross the globe, linking sacred sites separated by centuries and civilizations. The idea was first proposed in the 1920s by amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins, who noticed that churches, standing stones, and burial mounds often fell into straight-line patterns. But here's where it gets intriguing. Many of these alignments predate the modern landmarks built atop them, hinting at a far older, possibly intentional design. What if these lines weren't just coincidental? Some researchers argue they trace Earth's natural energy grids, akin to acupuncture meridians for the planet. Places like Sedona or Mount Shasta, where visitors report strange sensations, often sit at ley line intersections. The Chinese concept of dragon lines or the Aboriginal song lines of Australia echo similar ideas, paths where the land itself pulses with unseen force. Even skeptics can't ignore the odd synchronicity. The Great Pyramid, Machu Picchu, and Easter Island's Maui all align along a single globe-spanning ley line some call the equator of the ancients. Yet there's another, more practical theory. Ley lines might have been ancient highways guiding travelers between trade hubs or pilgrimage sites. The Inca Sec system, a network of ritual pathways radiating from Cusco, doubled as both spiritual and economic routes. In Europe, many ley lines trace old Roman roads or medieval trade paths, suggesting these alignments could be remnants of forgotten journeys worn into the land by countless feet. But the most tantalizing question isn't how these lines formed, it's why they resonate. From the Norse ley meaning cleared path to the Native American spirit trails, cultures worldwide describe these alignments as conduits for something beyond the physical. Modern technology adds fuel to the mystery. Satellite imagery reveals that some ley lines align with geological faults, where underground water flows or magnetic anomalies occur. Could ancient builders have sensed these subtle energies, marking them with stones and temples? The debate isn't just academic, it's a window into how our ancestors perceived their world. Whether ley lines are energy channels, trade routes, or celestial markers, their persistence across cultures suggests a shared intuition that the Earth isn't just a stage for human history, but an active participant in it. As we map these lines with GPS and ground-penetrating radar, we're not just tracing paths through the landscape, we're retracing the footsteps of a lost way of seeing, one where every hill, stone, and spring held meaning. The stones along these lines might be silent, but their alignment speaks volumes. Walk through the ruins of a Mayan temple in Palenque, and you'll notice something peculiar about its doorways. They're crowned by corbelled arches, stacked stones gradually stepping inward until they meet at the top. Now travel 5,000 miles to the temples of Mycenae in Greece, and you'll find nearly identical arches holding up structures built centuries apart. No phone calls, no trade routes, no shared blueprints. So how did these distant cultures arrive at the same solution? The mystery deepens in Peru, where Inca builders crafted trapezoidal doorways, their sloping sides defying earthquakes for centuries. Yet halfway around the world, the same shape appears in the temples of Hampi, India, and the megaliths of Malta. Coincidence or evidence of something far more deliberate? One theory points to lost maritime networks. The Polynesians crossed oceans in outrigger canoes, and the Phoenicians sailed the Mediterranean as early as 1500 BC. Could seafaring cultures have shared architectural secrets across continents? Ancient copper mines in Michigan and tin deposits in Cornwall suggest global trade existed long before historians assumed. Even Plato wrote of Atlantis's far-reaching influence, though most dismiss this as myth. Yet when you see the same mortar-free masonry in Japan's Asuka Pyramid and Bolivia's Pumapunku, it's hard not to wonder if whispers of technique traveled further than we've dared to imagine. Then there's the extraterrestrial angle, an idea popularized by theories like the ancient astronaut hypothesis. Proponents argue that precise stone cutting in Egypt and Peru required tools beyond Bronze Age capabilities. But here's the catch: humans are ingenious. The Incas used bronze chisels and sand abrasion to shape granite, while the Egyptians likely exploited natural fissures in stone, heating and cooling rocks to split them cleanly. These weren't alien technologies, they were triumphs of trial, error, and observation. The most compelling explanation lies in physics itself. Corbelled arches distribute weight downward, making them ideal for civilizations without keystone technology. Trapezoidal doorways stabilize structures in earthquake zones, a lesson the Inca mastered so well that their walls still stand after 500 years of tremors. These weren't copied designs, they were independent answers to universal problems. Build a roof without steel, step stones inward, live near fault lines. Slant your doorways. The real marvel isn't the similarity, it's the ingenuity. Yet some consistencies defy practicality. The Mayans, Egyptians, and Cambodians all aligned pyramids to cardinal directions with uncanny precision. The Olmecs and the Chinese both prized jade for its spiritual properties. These parallels suggest something deeper than engineering, a shared human instinct to seek harmony in form and function. Perhaps the Forgotten Manual wasn't a physical text but a collective intuition, a recognition that certain shapes, angles, and materials resonate with both the Earth and the cosmos. Modern architects still study these techniques. Earthquake-resistant buildings in Japan now mimic the Incas' trapezoidal designs, while green builders rediscover the cooling properties of stone vaults used in Persian wind catchers. The ancients weren't just building for their time, they encoded universal principles into their stones, principles we're only now relearning. So the next time you see a corbelled arch or a sloping doorway, remember, it's not just a relic. It's a conversation across millennia, a nod from the past saying, "We figured this out, will you?" There's a moment at Newgrange in Ireland, just after dawn on the winter solstice, when something extraordinary happens. A narrow beam of sunlight pierces through a perfectly aligned opening above the tomb's entrance, creeping slowly down the passageway until it floods the inner chamber with golden light, a spectacle that lasts exactly 17 minutes before fading away. This isn't a quirk of architecture, it's a feat of engineering so precise it could only have been achieved through generations of celestial observation. And Newgrange is far from alone. From the sun dagger of Choco Canyon in New Mexico to the solstice-aligned temples of Abu Simbel in Egypt, ancient builders worldwide orchestrated stone to capture the sun's dance with mathematical perfection. Consider the Temple of Karnak along the Nile. Every year on the winter solstice, sunlight streams through its towering gate, illuminating the innermost sanctuary where the statue of Amun-Ra, the sun god, would have sat. The Egyptians didn't just build a temple, they built a timekeeping device, one that marked the sun's rebirth at the year's darkest hour. Halfway across the world, the Mayans engineered El Caracol at Chichen Itza with narrow windows aligned to Venus's extremes, while its staircases framed equinox sunrises. These cultures, separated by oceans, shared a common obsession, harnessing sunlight as both calendar and covenant. But why this global fascination with solar alignments? Practicality played a role. The solstices signaled planting and harvest cycles critical for survival. Yet the symbolism runs deeper. In Peru, the Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu, literally, the hitching post of the sun, was carved so precisely that shadows vanish at noon during equinoxes, symbolically tying the sun to the earth. For the Inca, this wasn't just astronomy. It was an act of communion with the divine, a way to ensure the sun's return. Similarly, at Mnajdra Temple in Malta, solstice sunlight enters through doorways designed to frame the rising sun like a key fitting a lock, suggesting these structures were more than observatories. They were portals bridging human and cosmic realms. The sheer consistency of these alignments raises a tantalizing question. Was this knowledge shared or independently discovered? The Maya's long count calendar and Egypt's solar year both tracked time with astonishing accuracy, yet their methods differed. The Maya relied on complex glyphs and observatories, while Egyptians used shadow clocks and obelisks. This divergence hints at independent innovation, yet the underlying reverence for solar cycles feels universal. Perhaps it's no coincidence that cultures from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica worshipped sun deities, seeing in its daily rise and fall a metaphor for life, death, and renewal. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. LiDAR scans reveal that Cambodia's Angkor Wat is aligned so precisely with the equinox sun that its central tower casts no shadow at solar noon, an effect replicated in Mexico's Pyramid of the Niches. Even more striking, some alignments encode celestial events beyond human perception. The great Zimbabwe ruins in Africa align not just to solstices but to the heliacal rising of Canopus, a star invisible to the naked eye until certain times of year. How did builders without telescopes achieve this? The answer may lie in generational observation, with priests meticulously recording celestial patterns over centuries, etching them into stone as sacred inheritance. What's often overlooked is the subtlety of these alignments. At Bryn Celli in Wales, sunlight during the summer solstice doesn't just enter the tomb, it strikes a specific carved spiral, transforming the symbol into a shimmering ribbon of light. This level of precision suggests these monuments weren't just marking time, they were orchestrating experiences, using light as a narrative tool. The same principle appears in Egypt's Abu Simbel, where twice a year, sunlight penetrates 200 feet into the temple to illuminate statues of Ramses Roman II and the gods, but notably leaves Ptah, the god of darkness, forever in shadow. The legacy of these alignments endures. Today, crowds still gather at Stonehenge for the solstice sunrise, watching as the heel stone aligns with the rising sun, just as it has for millennia. There's a humbling truth in these moments. Ancient builders didn't just observe the cosmos, they conversed with it, crafting monuments that translated celestial rhythms into tangible wonder. Whether through shared wisdom or parallel revelation, they left us a message written not in words but in light and shadow. And every solstice, if we know where to look, we can still read it. From the Nile's serpentine path through Egypt to the sacred bends of the Ganges in India, water wasn't just a resource to ancient builders, it was a cosmic collaborator. The pyramids of Giza don't just face cardinal directions, they're precisely positioned near the Nile's floodplains, aligning with the river's annual inundation that fertilized the land. This wasn't accidental urban planning. The Egyptians saw the Nile as a celestial mirror, its cyclical floods echoing the rhythms of the heavens. Temples like Luxor and Karnak were built with canals that mirrored the Milky Way, turning the river into a terrestrial echo of the night sky. Water wasn't merely functional, it was a divine thread stitching Earth to the cosmos. Halfway across the world, the Khmer Empire engineered Angkor Wat's vast moats and reservoirs not just for irrigation, but as reflections of the Hindu cosmic ocean. The temple's central towers rise like Mount Meru, the mythological axis of the universe, while its surrounding waters symbolize the primordial sea. During the equinoxes, the sun aligns with the temple's main gate, casting a perfect reflection across the moat, a shimmering union of light, stone, and water. This wasn't just architecture, it was alchemy, blending the physical and spiritual into a single vision. Even in places where water was scarce, its symbolic power dominated. The desert city of Petra in Jordan carved intricate water channels into rose-red cliffs, directing scarce rainfall to ceremonial pools aligned with solstice sunrises. For the Nabateans, controlling water wasn't just survival, it was a sacred act, a way to harness the life force of the gods. Similarly, the Maya built cenotes, natural sinkholes, into their cities like Chichen Itza, positioning them as portals to the underworld. The famous sacred cenote wasn't just a water source, it was a bridge between worlds where offerings to the rain god Chak were cast into its depths. The engineering behind these alignments reveals a sophistication we're only beginning to appreciate. Machu Picchu's stone channels still function today, directing mountain springs through ceremonial baths with hydraulic precision. The Inca didn't just move water, they choreographed it, using gravity-fed fountains to create cascades that mirrored the sound of rainfall, a sensory ritual connecting worship to the elements. In Turkey, the Roman aqueducts of Ephesus were aligned not just for efficiency, but to follow ley lines, suggesting water carried energy as well as sustenance. But perhaps the most profound mystery lies in the symbolism. From Varanasi's Ghats, where the Ganges is believed to wash away karma, to the baptismal fonts of early Christian churches, water's purifying role transcends cultures. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia were surrounded by canals representing the four rivers of Eden, while the floating temples of Cambodia's Tonle Sap Lake seemed to rise from the water itself. These designs whisper a universal truth. Water wasn't just a tool or a symbol, it was a living force, a participant in the sacred geometry of the world. Modern science is now catching up to this ancient wisdom. Studies show that natural waterways often follow geological fault lines where Earth's magnetic fields fluctuate. Could ancient builders have sensed these subtle energies, aligning monuments to amplify or harness them? The acoustic properties of water, its ability to carry sound waves, might explain why so many sacred sites feature springs or pools near resonant chambers like Malta's hypogeum. Water, it seems, wasn't just a mirror for the stars. It was a conductor for something even more elusive, the unseen pulse of the planet itself. The legacy of these alignments lingers in unexpected ways. Venice's canals laid out in a sacred spiral pattern, or the Feng Shui principles guiding Chinese garden design, prove that the ancient dialogue between water and stone never truly ended. It simply evolved, flowing through history like a river carving its course. Next time you stand by a river or fountain, consider this: the ancients didn't just see water. They heard it speaking in currents, tides, and reflections, a language we're still learning to decipher. Standing beneath the pyramids of Giza at night, if you trace the three brightest stars of Orion's belt and lower your gaze to the horizon, you'll witness something uncanny. The three great pyramids mirror the constellations' exact configuration. But here's the twist: the alignment isn't just a rough match. The pyramid's layout corresponds to Orion's belt as it would have appeared not in the time of the pharaohs, but over 12,000 years ago, around 10,500 BCE. This is the heart of the Orion correlation theory, an idea that has ignited both fascination and fierce debate. Proponents like researcher Robert Bovell argue the pyramids are a terrestrial snapshot of the sky during an era when Orion reached its lowest point in the precessional cycle, a 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis that ancient astronomers shouldn't have known about. Critics counter that the alignment is circumstantial, pointing out that Orion's belt has shifted over millennia, and any random trio of structures could eventually line up with some celestial pattern. Yet the precision is staggering. The smallest pyramid, Menkora, is offset slightly to mirror the dimmest star in Orion's belt, Mintaka, while the Nile's course mirrors the Milky Way's glow in relation to the constellation. Even the air shafts inside the Great Pyramid point directly to Orion and Sirius during key epochs, suggesting these alignments weren't just decorative, they were deliberate, even instructional. The implications are profound. If intentional, this alignment implies the builders possessed knowledge of precession millennia before the Greek astronomer Hipparchus first documented it in 130 BC. How could a civilization without telescopes detect such a slow, subtle celestial shift? One possibility lies in oral traditions, generations of priests tracking star positions over centuries, passing down observations like a sacred baton. The Dogon people of Mali, for instance, knew of Sirius's invisible companion star centuries before telescopes confirmed it, hinting at lost methods of astronomical record-keeping. But the Orion correlation theory opens wider doors. If the pyramids encode ancient sky knowledge, what else might they conceal? The Sphinx, facing due east, aligns with the rising sun on the spring equinox. But some researchers suggest its lion-like form matches the constellation Leo as it would have appeared in 10,500 BC, further supporting the ancient blueprint hypothesis. Meanwhile, the pyramid's dimensions incorporate mathematical constants like pi and phi, suggesting the builders didn't just map the stars, they fused celestial mechanics with geometric perfection. Skeptics, however, highlight inconsistencies. The alignment isn't perfect, the pyramid's spacing differs slightly from Orion stars, and the theory relies on selective interpretations of Egyptian mythology. Yet even critics admit the Giza Plateau's layout is too precise to dismiss entirely. Modern astronomers confirm that the pyramid's sightlines to Orion would have been exact around 10,500 BC, a coincidence that strains probability. Perhaps the most compelling question isn't whether the theory is flawless, but why Orion held such significance. In Egyptian mythology, Osiris, the god of rebirth, was linked to Orion, while Sirius represented his consort Isis. The pyramid's alignment might not just be a star map, it could be a resurrection machine, designed to eternally connect the pharaoh's souls with the celestial realm. Similar ideas appear globally. The Hopi's creation myth speaks of ancestors emerging from the underworld guided by Orion, while the Maya tied the constellation to their maize god cycle of death and renewal. The Orion correlation theory forces us to reconsider not just the pyramids, but the roots of human knowledge. Whether it's proof of a lost civilization, an artifact of sacred astronomy, or an elaborate coincidence, one thing is certain: the stones of Giza continue to guard their secrets, whispering of a time when the sky wasn't just observed, but woven into the very fabric of earthly power. And if one constellation's alignment sparks this much debate, imagine what other celestial codes might lie buried in the world's oldest monuments, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Step into the underground labyrinth of Malta's hypogeum, and you'll notice something extraordinary. Whisper a word against its curved limestone walls, and the sound doesn't just echo. It resonates at a precise frequency of 110 Hz, a tone scientists now know can alter brainwave patterns, shifting consciousness into a meditative state. This isn't a quirk of architecture, it's acoustic engineering carved into stone 6,000 years ago. The hypogeum's oracle chamber amplifies voices so clearly that a speaker standing in one niche can be heard throughout the entire complex, yet the effect isn't just about volume. The chamber's shape and materials filter sound, creating vibrations that ancient worshippers might have felt as much as heard, a physical dialogue between human voice and earth. Across the Atlantic, the Mayans achieved similar feats without metal tools or blueprints. At Chichen Itza's El Castillo, A handclap at the base of the pyramid produces an eerily accurate echo mimicking the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. But the real marvel lies in its whispering gallery, stand at one end of the ball court, and a murmur travels over 450 feet along the high walls, arriving at the opposite end as clearly as if the speaker were beside you. The Maya didn't just build stadiums, they designed sonic highways, turning stone into a conductor for messages or perhaps prayers meant to transcend ordinary speech. These acoustic masterpieces weren't isolated experiments. In Peru, the Temple of the Moon near Cusco contains niches that hum when wind passes through them, generating tones matching the frequencies used in modern sound therapy. Greece's Epidaurus Theatre, built in the 4th century BCE, allows unamplified voices to reach 15,000 spectators with crystal clarity, a design so advanced modern acousticians still study its curves. Even Stonehenge's blue stones, when struck, produce resonant tones like bronze bells, suggesting they might have been part of a Neolithic soundscape. The question isn't whether these cultures understood acoustics, it's why they prioritized them. One clue lies in the universal link between sound and spirituality. Tibetan monks use singing bowls to induce trance states, while Aboriginal didgeridoos create vibrations believed to heal. Ancient builders might have harnessed similar principles, crafting spaces where sound didn't just fill the air but transformed it. Research at the hypogeum reveals that 110 Hz, the frequency its chambers amplify, can suppress the brain's language centers while activating areas tied to imagery and emotion, effectively rewiring perception. Was this an ancient tool for transcendence, a way to tune the mind to frequencies beyond everyday thought? The precision behind these designs dispels any notion of accident. At Newgrange, Ireland's 5,000-year-old passage tomb, the entrance corridor's length and width create a resonant cavity that amplifies rhythmic chanting while dampening dissonant noise. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid's subterranean chambers vibrate at frequencies matching Earth's natural resonance, leading some physicists to speculate they functioned as giant tuning forks, harmonizing with the planet's pulse. Even more striking, many of these sites align acoustics with astronomy. Chichen Itza's Quetzal echo only occurs at certain solar alignments, while Malta's hypogeum's sound effects intensify during equinox sunlight. Modern science is just beginning to catch up. Cymatics, the study of visible sound, shows how specific frequencies shape matter into intricate geometric patterns, mirroring the sacred geometries found in ancient temples. Could builders have known that sound, like light, could carve order from chaos? The recurring use of limestone in acoustic sites from Malta to Mayan pyramids hints at deliberate material choices. This stone's density and porosity filter sound waves with near miraculous precision. Perhaps the most haunting evidence lies in the artifacts left behind. Bone flutes unearthed in Neolithic caves play notes matching the resonant frequencies of nearby chambers. Clay vessels found in Central America contain quartz crystals that vibrate at healing frequencies when struck. These weren't just tools or toys, they were instruments in a grand, silent symphony, a science of vibration that wove together architecture, astronomy, and the human nervous system. The legacy of these soundscapes still vibrates today. Singers at Epidaurus note how the theater's acoustics seem to lift their voices effortlessly, while visitors to the hypogeum describe an uncanny sense of being heard by the stones themselves. In a world increasingly dominated by visual stimuli, these monuments remind us that our ancestors experienced reality not just through sight but through sound, a dimension where every whisper could be a prayer and every echo an answer. High above the desert sands of Egypt, the ceiling of the Dendera temple glows with one of the most intact ancient zodiacs ever discovered. a sprawling circle of constellations carved in stone, with Taurus the bull and Leo the lion gazing down as if frozen mid-step across the heavens. But this isn't just decoration. The temple's entire layout mirrors the zodiac's 12-fold division, its axis aligned so that the rising sun during the summer solstice illuminates the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, while winter solstice dawn lights up the scarab symbol of rebirth. These aren't random acts of devotion, they're celestial choreography, a way to anchor earthly rituals to the cosmic clock. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. The zodiac was more than a star map, it was an architectural blueprint. In India, the Sun Temple of Konark is designed as a colossal chariot with 12 pairs of wheels, each representing a zodiac sign, while its stone spokes cast shadows that act as a sundial, marking hours and seasons with uncanny precision. Over in Mesopotamia, the ziggurat of Ur was once crowned with a shrine to the moon god Nana, its 7 tiers symbolizing not just the visible planets but the celestial layers of the universe. These structures didn't just reference the stars, they embodied them, turning stone into a 3-dimensional star chart. What's startling is the consistency of this practice across cultures. The Maya painted zodiac-like constellations in the Dresden Codex, using them to time agricultural cycles, while China's Temple of Heaven in Beijing features 3 circular terraces mirroring the celestial dome, where emperors performed rites aligned with the lunar zodiac to ensure harmony between heaven and earth. Even in medieval Europe, Gothic cathedrals like Chartres encoded zodiacal imagery into their labyrinths and stained glass, synchronizing Christian liturgy with older cosmic rhythms. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a sophisticated system, a way to sync human activity with the universe's pulse. The practical applications were profound. At Dendera, priests likely used the zodiac ceiling to track the precession of the equinoxes, that slow 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis. Certain constellations, like the gap between Virgo and Leo, align with temple reliefs depicting the pharaoh receiving life from the gods, a celestial metaphor for kingship renewed through cosmic cycles. Similarly, the Maya's ecliptic zoo at Capon depicts zodiacal animals marking solar and lunar nodes, allowing priests to predict eclipses with startling accuracy. These alignments weren't just symbolic, they were functional, turning temples into both calendars and celestial warning systems. Yet the spiritual dimension runs even deeper. In Hindu tradition, temple pillars often align with specific nakshatras, lunar zodiac signs believed to channel divine energy. Pilgrims circumambulate shrines in zodiacal sequence, mirroring the sun's path through the ecliptic. At Greece's Temple of Apollo in Delphi, the omphalos stone marking the navel of the world was etched with zodiacal glyphs, suggesting oracles may have used astral alignments to time their prophecies. The common thread, a belief that the stars weren't distant lights, but living forces, divine intelligences that could be invoked, mirrored, and even negotiated with through sacred geometry. Modern archaeology is uncovering how precise these connections were. LiDAR scans reveal that Angkor Wat's central towers align not just with solstices, but with the constellation Draco during its zenith in 10,500 BC, echoing the same Orion correlation seen in Egypt. Meanwhile, the Nazca lines in Peru, those vast geoglyphs only visible from the air, include a sprawling zodiacal monkey whose orientation matches the Milky Way's position during summer rains. Were these monuments attempts to trap celestial power in terrestrial form, or to remind humanity of its place in a vast patterned cosmos? The answer might lie in the materials themselves. Many zodiac-aligned temples incorporate stones with high quartz content, like the rose granite of Egypt's Serapeum or the andesite of Indonesia's Borobudur, materials known to resonate at frequencies that align with human brainwaves. Combine this with the acoustic properties we've seen in sites like Malta's hypogeum, and a pattern emerges. These weren't just buildings, they were instruments tuned to frequencies both celestial and biological, designed to harmonize the human experience with the universe's grand design. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in the contrast with our modern world. Where ancient architects saw the zodiac as a bridge between realms, we've reduced it to newspaper horoscopes. Yet the stones still whisper their old truths, that the sky was once a script and temples were the pages on which it was written. As we decode these alignments, we're not just rediscovering lost science, we're reclaiming a language that once let humanity converse with the stars. Carved into the temple walls of Abydos, Egypt, etched onto the floors of China's Forbidden City, and painted into the sacred art of Turkey's Cappadocia caves, the same mesmerizing pattern emerges, a series of overlapping circles forming a hexagonal symmetry known as the flower of life. This isn't just an artistic coincidence, it's a geometric echo reverberating across continents and millennia. The pattern's perfection lies in its simplicity. With just a compass and a steady hand, you can recreate this ancient blueprint, which encodes the very building blocks of existence, from the molecular structure of water to the hexagonal cells of a honeycomb. The ubiquity of this design raises a profound question. Why did cultures with no known contact all gravitate toward the same sacred geometry? Take the mandalas of Tibetan Buddhism, intricate circular designs that serve as meditation tools and cosmic maps. At their core, they mirror the flower of life's concentric harmony, radiating outward like ripples in a pond. Similarly, the labyrinth of Chartres Cathedral in France, though Christian in context, follows the same spiral logic found in the Hopi medicine wheels of North America. These aren't just paths or decorations, they're symbolic journeys representing the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. The recurrence of these patterns suggests something deeper than cultural diffusion. It hints at a shared human instinct to visualize the invisible rhythms of the universe. Consider the practical applications. In India, the Sri Yantra, a geometric diagram of interlocking triangles, is used even today as a focus for meditation and energy alignment. Its precise angles and intersections generate a visual vibration, a phenomenon modern physicists confirm occurs when specific geometric shapes interact with light waves. The Mayans, meanwhile, embedded fractal geometry into their temple designs, repeating the same patterns at different scales to mimic the branching of trees or the flow of rivers. This wasn't mere mimicry, it was an attempt to harness the generative power of nature's algorithms. The most compelling evidence, though, lies in the precision. The flower of life's proportions align with the golden ratio, a mathematical constant found in everything from seashells to galaxies. When overlaid onto the Great Pyramid's base, the patterned circles match the structure's key dimensions with eerie accuracy. Even more striking, the same geometry appears in the stone carvings of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, predating the pyramids by 6,000 years. How could Neolithic hunters with rudimentary tools conceive of such advanced mathematics? Perhaps the answer lies in the patterns themselves. Studies in cymatics, the science of visible sound, show that specific frequencies cause sand or liquid to arrange itself into geometric shapes identical to these ancient designs. Did early cultures discover that certain sounds or rituals could tune reality, using geometry as a bridge between the seen and unseen? The Jain temples of India, adorned with endless knot designs, or the Celtic triskells spiraling across megalithic stones, all seem to encode this idea that the universe is a tapestry of interconnected geometries, and to understand them is to touch the divine. The legacy of these patterns endures in unexpected ways. Modern architects like Buckminster Fuller rediscovered their power, using geodesic domes based on sacred geometry to create structures of unparalleled strength. Even quantum physicists now speak of spin networks, geometric frameworks that underpin the fabric of space-time, a concept that would feel eerily familiar to the builders of Angkor Wat or the designers of the Aztec calendar stone. What if these repeating shapes aren't just artifacts, but fragments of a lost science, a language without words where circles and spirals convey truths that transcend time and culture? The next time you see a mandala, a labyrinth, or the flower of life, remember, you're not just looking at art, you're glimpsing a code, one that has whispered to humanity for millennia. The universe is not random. It is patterned, purposeful, and perhaps profoundly knowable. The Navajo people of the American Southwest have long built their traditional hogans, circular dwellings with doorways facing east in precise alignment with the four sacred mountains marking the cardinal directions. According to their creation stories, these mountains were placed by the holy people as cosmic anchors, and the hogans mirror this sacred geometry. But this isn't just poetic tradition, it's a living map. The myth of the Four Mountains encodes practical knowledge how to navigate vast deserts using celestial markers, when to plant crops based on seasonal shifts, even where to find water in arid lands. What seems like folklore is, in reality, a sophisticated system of survival science passed down through stories instead of textbooks. This pattern repeats globally. In Greece, the myth of Apollo's chariot pulling the sun across the sky corresponds to the alignment of temples like Delphi, where the gods' oracles spoke at dawn on solstice days. The story wasn't just a fanciful explanation for sunrise, it was a way to remember when and where to observe the sun's turning points, critical for agricultural calendars. Similarly, the Aboriginal songlines of Australia, mythic tales of ancestral beings crisscrossing the land, double as navigational charts, describing rock formations and water sources with pinpoint accuracy over thousands of miles. These stories weren't told around fires for entertainment. They were mnemonic devices, preserving complex environmental data in memorable form. The gods themselves might hold the key to decoding these alignments. Take the Egyptian goddess Nut, her star-studded body arched across temple ceilings, swallowing the sun each evening to rebirth it at dawn. This vivid imagery mirrors the precise east-west orientation of Luxor's temples, where sunlight penetrates deepest chambers only during equinoxes. Nut's myth isn't just cosmology. It's an architectural instruction manual, teaching priests how to align structures with celestial events. Likewise, the Hindu god Shiva's dance of destruction and creation mirrors the cyclical alignments of Cambodia's Angkor Wat, where towers mark the sun's yearly journey, myth made manifest in stone. Even conflicts between deities reveal hidden sciences. The Babylonian epic Enuma Elish describes the god Marduk slaying the chaos dragon Tiamat and using her body to create the ordered universe. Scholars now recognize this as a metaphor for the shift from lunar to solar timekeeping, reflected in ziggurats aligned to both moon phases and solstice sunrises. The drama of gods battling wasn't just theology. It was a way to encode the tension between competing calendar systems vital for empire administration. The most compelling evidence lies in the margins of these myths, details often dismissed as decorative. The Norse world tree Yggdrasil, with its roots in the underworld and branches in the heavens, finds concrete expression in the layout of Viking ring forts, where gateways align with midsummer sunrises and winter moonstands. The tree wasn't just a symbol, it was a blueprint for aligning earthly structures with cosmic axes. Similarly, the Maya's hero twins myth, recounting a ball game against the lords of death, corresponds to the precise acoustics of Capon's ball court, where a whisper at one end carries clearly to the other, a ritual reenactment of communication between worlds. Modern researchers are only beginning to appreciate the depth of this encoded knowledge. When the Maori of New Zealand speak of the demigod Maui slowing the sun with ropes, the story coincides with solar alignments in meeting houses designed to maximize winter sunlight. The ropes aren't just fantasy, they're a metaphor for the wooden lintels and notches used to track the sun's declination. Even the Arthurian legend of the sword Excalibur, thrust into stone at a specific angle, mirrors the solstice alignments of standing stones like Britain's Arthur's Stone. What emerges is a radical idea that myths weren't humanity's first attempts to explain the unknown, but their most effective way to preserve the known. The gods didn't create alignments, alignments created the gods, personifying natural forces into memorable characters whose stories carried vital data across generations. When the Navajo speak of the holy people placing the sacred mountains, or the Greeks describe Apollo's solar chariot, they're not just telling tales. They're maintaining a chain of wisdom, one where every metaphor holds measurement, every deity a direction, and every legend a map waiting to be read. Imagine trying to align a 5-ton stone block with the rising sun using nothing but a wooden stick and a length of twine. To modern eyes, the tools of ancient surveyors seem impossibly rudimentary, yet the precision they achieved puts many of our digital instruments to shame. The Egyptians' Merkit, often dismissed as a simple plumb line, was in fact a sophisticated star tracking device. Used in pairs, these palm-sized notched palms could measure the alignment of stars like Sirius with an accuracy rivaling modern theodolites. Priests would sight along the Merkit's central groove to establish true north by tracking a star's arc across the night sky, then use knotted ropes to transpose those celestial coordinates onto the desert floor. The Great Pyramid's near-perfect cardinal alignment, deviating less than 1/15 of a degree, stands as silent testament to this stargazing technology. Half a world away, the Inca engineers of Machu Picchu worked with an entirely different toolkit. Their SEC system wasn't just a collection of shrines, it was a 3-dimensional GPS network etched into the Andes. 41 invisible lines radiated from Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, each marking sacred pathways to Huaca's shrines positioned with deliberate precision. Some aligned with solstice sunrises, others with the helical rising of Venus, while many followed the contours of mountain springs in a perfect marriage of astronomy and hydrology. What appears at first glance to be a religious pilgrimage route reveals itself as a masterclass in geodetic surveying, the Inca equivalent of satellite triangulation, achieved without wheels or writing. But the real marvel lies in the tools that didn't survive. Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of ocean miles using stick charts that mapped ocean swells as precisely as modern bathymetric surveys. The Maya likely employed cord and weight devices similar to medieval European groma to lay out their ceremonial centers, yet not a single example survives in the archaeological record. Even more intriguing are the mysterious bronze artifacts found at Shang Dynasty sites, curved metal plates with intricate gradations that some scholars believe functioned as protractors for aligning cities along Earth's magnetic fields. The sophistication becomes even more striking when you examine the margin of error, or rather, the near absence of one. At Teotihuacan, the so-called Avenue of the Dead runs straight for over 2 miles with a deviation of less than 1 meter, a feat requiring constant astronomical recalibration given the site's construction spanned centuries. Similarly, the Nazca lines maintain perfect geometric proportions across miles of rugged terrain, despite being laid out without aerial perspective. Recent experiments show that teams using replica ancient tools, simple sighting poles, and measured ropes can achieve similar precision through painstaking iterative methods, suggesting these civilizations prioritized accuracy over speed in ways modern builders rarely contemplate. Perhaps the greatest lost technique was the holistic worldview behind these measurements, where modern surveyors separate astronomy from geography. Ancient practitioners saw them as interconnected systems. The Babylonian Gurash system divided circles into 360 degrees not for mathematical convenience, but because their star catalogues showed the sun moving approximately 1 degree per day along the ecliptic. Chinese Feng Shui compasses integrated magnetic declination with lunar mansion markers, creating alignment tools that simultaneously accounted for terrestrial and celestial forces. This fusion of scales, from the microscopic pull of lodestones to the grand sweep of precession, suggests a scientific paradigm far more integrated than our own compartmentalized disciplines. The lingering question isn't whether these techniques worked. The monuments prove they did, but how much knowledge vanished in the gaps between civilizations. When the Library of Alexandria burned, it may have taken with it treatises on geodesy that would make our GPS systems seem crude. The oral traditions of Polynesian wayfinders, only recently revived after near extinction, hint at entire schools of Earth measurement passed down through chance and star lore rather than textbooks. As laser scans reveal ever more subtle alignments in ancient sites, we're forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our ancestors' primitive tools may have been the visible tip of an intellectual iceberg, most of which now lies submerged in the depths of forgotten time. Imagine tracking a celestial shift so gradual it takes 72 years for the stars to move just 1 degree across the night sky. That's the precession of the equinoxes, Earth's slow 26,000-year wobble on its axis. While modern astronomy only confirmed this phenomenon in the last few centuries, the Maya carved its cycle into the long count calendar, marking epochs of 13 backtons, roughly 5,125 years each, with an accuracy that still baffles historians. Even older, the Vedic texts of India describe the Yuga cycle, where ages rise and fall in spans mirroring precessional half-cycles, suggesting ancient observers didn't just notice this cosmic dance, they built entire cosmologies around it. The real mystery isn't that they recognized precession, it's how. Without telescopes or written records spanning millennia, how could cultures separated by oceans and epochs detect changes almost imperceptible within a single lifetime? The answer might lie in the ultimate long game, generational star lore. Egyptian temple priests meticulously recorded heliacal risings of Sirius on ivory tablets, noting how the star's first dawn appearance shifted over centuries. Similarly, the Maya's Dresden Codex contains Venus tables accurate across 500 years, proving they tracked planetary motions with patient precision. This wasn't casual stargazing, it was a sacred duty, with each generation adding another link to a chain of observation stretching further back than written history. But stone may have been their most durable ledger. At Angkor Wat, the temple's bas-reliefs depict the churning of the Milky Ocean, a Hindu myth some scholars now interpret as a metaphor for precession, the serpent Vasuki's coils mirroring the Milky Way's shifting orientation over epochs. Even more striking, the temple's axis aligns with the winter solstice sunrise in the 12th century, but computer reconstructions show it would have matched the equinox sun 13,000 years earlier, suggesting the builders encoded multiple eras into a single alignment. Similarly, the Great Sphinxes gaze toward the vernal equinox sunrise in 10,500 BC, when Leo would have dominated that dawn sky. Hints at a tradition preserving knowledge of the zodiac's slow backward crawl through the ages. The mechanisms they used to track this crawl were ingeniously low-tech. The Babylonian mul, a pin, tablets list stars along the ecliptic, noting how their positions drifted over centuries relative to equinox points. The Dogon people of Mali, whose oral traditions accurately describe Sirius's 50-year orbital period, may have used similar star clocks carved into ritual artifacts. Even Stonehenge's Aubrey holes, those mysterious pits encircling the monument, could have served as a precessional calculator. Markers moved incrementally over generations to track the moon's shifting extremes, which themselves cycle every 18.6 years, a fractal piece of Earth's grand wobble. What's most humbling is the scale of their dedication. Detecting precession requires comparing observations across centuries, a task demanding unbroken tradition. The Mayas' calendar round synchronized solar and ritual years over 52-year spans, but their long count stretched back to a mythical starting point in August of 3114 BCE, suggesting they inherited or reconstructed observations spanning millennia. Similarly, Hindu astronomers spoke of Mahayugas lasting over 4 million years, cycles so vast they imply not just record-keeping, but a willingness to contemplate time itself as a sacred geometry. Modern technology now confirms their accuracy. When archaeologists used software to rewind the night sky over Teotihuacan, they found the Street of the Dead aligned not just with the Pleiades in the 6th century CE, but with the same cluster's position in 13,000 BC, a date echoing the Sphinx's proposed alignment. Coincidence stretches thin when cultures worldwide embed the same cosmic timeline into stone. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't how they measured precession, but why they cared so deeply. To the ancients, these slow celestial tides weren't abstract. They were the breath of the cosmos, governing ages of plenty and darkness, renewal and collapse. In tracking them, they sought not just knowledge but communion with time itself. Beneath the towering red rocks of Sedona, visitors often report strange sensations, tingling skin, sudden emotional shifts, even visions. Local guides claim these experiences stem from vortex sites, spots where Earth's energy supposedly spirals upward like invisible whirlpools, but Sedona isn't unique. From the mist-shrouded slopes of Mount Shasta to the rolling hills of England's Glastonbury Tor, certain landscapes have been revered for millennia as places where the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds grows thin. What's fascinating isn't just the persistence of these beliefs, it's how often they overlap with ancient monuments deliberately placed at these exact locations. The concept of Earth energy lines isn't new. Traditional Chinese medicine speaks of dragon lines or meridians coursing through the landscape, much like the energy channels in the human body. In Peru, shamans still perform rituals along sex, invisible pathways connecting sacred springs and mountains, while Aboriginal Australians follow song lines that trace both geographic and energetic routes across the continent. These traditions share a striking similarity. They all describe the land as a living network, pulsing with currents modern science is only beginning to measure. Recent studies add intriguing weight to these ancient claims. Geologists have found that many sacred sites sit atop geological faults where underground water flows create subtle electromagnetic anomalies. The Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid, for example, aligns with a subterranean water channel, while Stonehenge's bluestones were quarried from a Welsh outcrop rich in piezoelectric crystals, stones that generate electric charge under pressure. Even more compelling, devices like the geomagnetometer have detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations at places like Avebury's stone circles, with readings spiking during solstices and equinoxes. But the real mystery lies in how ancient builders might have detected these energies. Some researchers point to dowsing, the practice of using rods or pendulums to locate underground water, a skill depicted in Egyptian tomb paintings and still used today by utility workers. Others suggest certain rock types, like the andesite of Machu Picchu's temples or the rose granite of Egypt's pyramids, naturally amplify Earth's resonances due to their high quartz content. When struck or exposed to specific frequencies, these stones can produce measurable vibrations matching Earth's natural electromagnetic pulse. The same frequency range some claim induces altered states of consciousness. The spiritual interpretation of these sites adds another layer. In Hindu tradition, the 7 chakras of the human body find their macrocosmic counterparts in Earth's sacred mountains, from Mount Kailash, the crown chakra, to Mount Shasta, the root. Pilgrimage routes often follow these alignments, suggesting ancient cultures saw travel as a form of energetic attunement. Similarly, Native American medicine wheels frequently mark spots where compass needles behave erratically, hinting at localized magnetic anomalies that might have been perceived as spiritual gateways. Modern science is now playing catch-up. Projects like the Global Coherence Initiative use superconducting magnetometers to monitor Earth's resonant frequencies, discovering that seismic activity and solar storms can disrupt these patterns, exactly what many traditions describe as periods of spiritual unrest. Meanwhile, studies in biophysics show that living organisms, from trees to humans, synchronize with Earth's natural electromagnetic field, raising the possibility that ancient builders weren't just constructing monuments, but creating resonant environments designed to harmonize human biology with planetary rhythms. Whether you view these alignments through the lens of geology, spirituality, or lost science, one thing becomes clear: our ancestors perceived dimensions of the landscape we're only beginning to quantify. The stones they placed might be more than markers, they could be transducers, translating Earth's silent song into forms we're finally learning to hear. Plato's account of Atlantis, a mighty island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, swallowed by the sea in a single cataclysmic day, might read like allegory, but it raises a haunting question. Why do nearly every ancient culture, from the Maya to Mesopotamia, preserve nearly identical stories of a great flood and a lost golden age? The Hopi speak of their ancestors emerging from underground to escape rising waters, while Sumerian tablets describe the gods punishing humanity with a deluge, sparing only the wise Utnapishtim. Even the Bible's Noah finds echoes in Hindu texts, where the fish god Matsya warns Manu to build an ark. These aren't isolated myths, they're fragments of a global memory, hinting at a time when a shared civilization might have bridged continents before vanishing beneath the waves. The architectural fingerprints left behind only deepen the mystery. Consider the megalithic walls of Peru's Sacsayhuaman, where 1,000-ton stones fit together with such precision that not a blade of grass can slip between them, a technique eerily similar to Japan's Yonaguni Monument, submerged off Okinawa, or the Cyclopean masonry of Malta's Tarxian temples. How did cultures separated by oceans and millennia develop identical construction methods? The conventional timeline of human progress crumbles when you realize the Great Pyramid's base aligns with true north more accurately than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, while Cambodia's Angkor Wat mirrors the Draco constellation's position from 12,000 years ago. These aren't incremental innovations, they're the work of master builders working from the same forgotten playbook. Maritime clues add fuel to the fire. The Phoenicians, renowned as antiquity's greatest sailors, claimed their navigation skills came from a much older seafaring culture. Polynesian oral histories describe a vast continent called Hiva that sank beneath the Pacific, leaving only scattered islands. Even more compelling, the sweet potato, a crop native to South America, was cultivated in Polynesia centuries before European contact, suggesting transoceanic exchange long before history books acknowledge. Could a pre-flood civilization have mapped the globe, planting the seeds of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering along its trade routes? The scientific pushback is fierce, and rightly so. Without physical evidence of a sunken metropolis, Atlantis remains speculative, yet intriguing anomalies persist. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar images reveal symmetrical stone structures at depths suggesting they're over 10,000 years old, older than any known pyramid. In India's Gulf of Combat, divers recovered pottery shards and human artifacts from a submerged riverbed dating back to 7,500 BCE. These underwater graveyards hint at settlements lost to rising seas when glaciers melted at the end of the last ice age, around 9,600 BCE. Perhaps the most tantalizing evidence lies in the stars themselves. The Dogon people of Mali, with no access to telescopes, knew of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye, and described its 50-year orbit millennia before astronomers confirmed it. Their legends say this knowledge came from amphibious beings called Nommo, who arrived from the sky. Similarly, the Maya's long count calendar starts in 3114 BCE, a date with no obvious significance to their own history, but coinciding with the peak of advanced cultures in Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. These threads suggest a tapestry of knowledge woven long before recorded history, now frayed by time. The controversy isn't just academic, it's a challenge to our understanding of human potential. Mainstream archaeology insists civilization began with Sumer around 4000 BCE, yet Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to 9600 BCE, features massive carved pillars and precise solar alignments that shatter this timeline. If hunter-gatherers could build such a site, what else might they have achieved? The flood myths, the shared constellations, the uncanny architectural parallels, they all whisper of a shadow epoch, a chapter of human history erased by rising waters but preserved in stone and story. Whether Atlantis was a literal island or a metaphor for a forgotten epoch, its legacy endures in the alignment of monuments that still baffle us. The real Atlantis might not be a place to discover, but a question to confront. How much of our past lies buried beneath the waves of time, and what might those lost builders still teach us about the unity of human knowledge? Long before satellites and GPS signals, ancient mariners crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using nothing but the stars as their guide, and the stones left behind suggest they had help from land-based monuments too. The Polynesians' feats of navigation still astonish modern sailors. Without compasses or charts, they traversed the Pacific by memorizing star paths, sequences of rising and setting stars that functioned like celestial highways. But their voyages didn't rely on the sky alone. On islands from Hawaii to New Zealand, they erected stone platforms called mari and aligned them to key stars, creating physical reference points that confirmed their position when land was out of sight. These weren't just shrines, they were navigational hubs, where the angle of a star over a particular stone might signal safe passage to Tahiti or warn of dangerous currents. Half a world away, Stonehenge's towering trilithons may have served a similar purpose, not for ocean voyages, but for overland travel. Recent laser surveys reveal that the monument sits at the intersection of ancient processional routes stretching across Britain. Its alignment with the summer solstice sunrise would have provided a yearly reset for travelers' mental maps, while its smaller, station stones frame the moon's extreme northern and southern positions, acting as a crude but effective compass. Archaeologists now suspect the site was part of a vast network of trade and pilgrimage paths, where celestial markers helped guide Bronze Age merchants transporting Cornish tin or Welsh gold. The Vikings took this concept even further. Their sunstones, crystals of calcite or cordierite, could locate the sun through clouds or even after sunset by filtering polarized light. But they also relied on land-based markers. In Norway, burial mounds were often placed on coastlines at specific angles to prominent mountain peaks, creating sightlines that helped sailors navigate fjords in poor visibility. One such mound, the Herlugshaugen, aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunset when viewed from a key shipping channel, a natural lighthouse built into the landscape itself. What's fascinating is how these systems transcended cultures. The Aboriginal songlines of Australia weave geography and astronomy into oral maps so precise they can guide a traveler hundreds of miles across featureless desert. Certain rock formations or trees along these routes align with star patterns, functioning as checkpoints in an invisible but meticulously coded network. Similarly, the Inca sect system radiated from Cusco like spokes on a wheel, with shrines positioned along lines that corresponded to both celestial events and trade routes, a terrestrial mirror of the Milky Way they called Mayu, the cosmic river. The most compelling evidence lies in the margins of error, or rather their absence. When researchers attempted to sail from Tahiti to New Zealand using only traditional Polynesian navigation methods, they arrived within 30 miles of their target after a 3,000-mile journey. That's an accuracy of 99% achieved without a single written map. Stone markers on Rapa Nui, Easter Island, align not just with solstices, but with the flight paths of seabirds heading toward fishing grounds, proving these waypoints served multiple layers of practical knowledge. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. LiDAR scans in Mesoamerica reveal that Maya causeways often follow precise astronomical bearings, with certain roads pointing directly to Venus at its zenith. In Cambodia, the ancient highways connecting Angkor to outlying temples form a grid that matches lunar standstill positions, suggesting these weren't just roads, but linear observatories where every step could double as a celestial measurement. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in what we've forgotten. Where ancient navigators saw constellations as ancestors or animals, we see dots to connect. Where they heard stories in the angles between stones, we see rubble, yet the stones still remember. The next time you glance at a megalith or mound, consider this. It might not just mark a grave or honor a god. It could be the remnant of an ancient rest stop, a beacon in a world where the sky and earth were partners in every journey, and where getting lost meant learning to read the language of the land itself. Alchemy's true pursuit was never mere metallurgy. It was the transformation of the human soul, and the sacred sites that survive today might be its most enduring laboratory notes. Chartres Cathedral, that Gothic masterpiece rising from the French countryside, is far more than a medieval church. Its labyrinthine floor design mirrors the alchemical opus, a winding path symbolizing the seeker's journey from base matter to spiritual gold. Even the cathedral's placement isn't accidental. It sits atop a prehistoric well and aligns with ley lines, those invisible energy channels ancient builders seemed to sense long before modern dowsing rods confirmed their presence. The stained glass windows, glowing with celestial blues and rubies, don't just depict biblical scenes. They encode the stages of alchemical transformation, from nigredo blackening to rubedo reddening, in panels that catch the sun at precise angles during solstices. This fusion of sacred geometry and spiritual quest appears globally. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, that cryptic foundation of alchemical thought, declares, "As above, so below," a principle etched into the very stones of Egypt's Temple of Edfu. There, the inner sanctum's dimensions create a perfect cube, mirroring the celestial cube described in Revelation, while its alignment with Sirius's heliacal rising ties earthly rituals to cosmic cycles. Similarly, the philosopher's stone, often misrepresented as a literal gem, might instead be symbolized by the Kaaba in Mecca, a black cubical structure around which pilgrims circumambulate, echoing the alchemical process of solve et coagula, dissolution and rebirth. The tools of alchemy reveal deeper layers. Medieval manuscripts depict Athena's furnaces shaped like church spires, suggesting laboratory and sanctuary were one. At Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, carvings of maize, a plant unknown in Europe when the chapel was built, hint at esoteric knowledge exchanged across continents, while its apprentice pillar swirls with carved vines that follow Fibonacci sequences, mirroring the organic growth alchemists sought to replicate. Even the labyrinth beneath Rome's San Clement Basilica, with its subterranean streams and Mithraic symbols, feels like a physical mandala, guiding initiates through layers of material and spiritual refinement. Modern science is now decoding what alchemists intuited. The golden ratio, embedded in everything from Charter's floor plan to the Great Pyramid's chambers, appears in quantum physics as the God particles decay patterns. The alchemical caduceus, twin serpents winding a staff, uncannily resembles DNA's double helix. Perhaps the true transmutation alchemists sought wasn't of lead, but of perception. Sacred sites as three-dimensional textbooks, teaching that the universe's secrets are written not in words, but in geometry, alignment, and light. The next time you walk a cathedral's nave or trace a temple's carvings, remember, you're not just exploring a building, you're stepping into an alchemist's workshop where every stone is a recipe for awakening. Unfurl a pine cone or examine the curve of a nautilus shell, and you'll find the same elegant spiral repeating itself, a pattern where each segment grows by adding the two before it, creating the Fibonacci sequence, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and onward to infinity. This isn't just a quirk of biology, it's a mathematical rhythm woven into the fabric of existence. Sunflowers arrange their seeds along Fibonacci spirals to maximize packing efficiency. Hurricanes swirl in logarithmic spirals matching the sequence, and even the arms of galaxies like the Milky Way trace this ancient code. But what's truly astonishing is how often this same pattern appears in the monuments of antiquity, as if ancient builders had cracked nature's growth algorithm and translated it into stone. Take the Parthenon's facade. At first glance, its columns appear evenly spaced, but measure the intervals, and you'll discover they follow the Fibonacci ratio. Each section's width relates to the next as 1 to 1.618. The so-called golden ratio. This proportion doesn't just please the eye, it creates a sense of dynamic balance, the same harmony found in branching trees or the human face. The Egyptians embedded this knowledge even earlier. The Great Pyramid's height stands in golden ratio to half its base perimeter, while its inner chambers dimensions echo Fibonacci numbers. Halfway across the world, Cambodia's Angkor Wat temples feature doorways proportioned to the sequence, and the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica stack levels in increments mirroring the pattern. Why would cultures separated by continents and millennia gravitate toward the same mathematical blueprint? One answer lies in efficiency. Fibonacci spirals allow for optimal space utilization, whether in seed heads maximizing sunlight exposure or temple layouts directing airflow. But the deeper connection might be cosmological. The sequence appears in planetary orbits, where the ratio of Venus's rotations to Earth years forms a near-perfect Fibonacci spiral. Ancient astronomers tracking these cycles could have recognized the pattern as a celestial signature, embedding it into architecture to align human creations with universal order. The spiritual dimension adds another layer. Hindu mandalas, Buddhist stupas, and Islamic tilework all incorporate the golden ratio, seeing it as a visual representation of divine harmony. The Pythagoreans considered Fibonacci numbers sacred, associating them with the music of the spheres, the idea that planetary motions create inaudible harmonies. When Gothic cathedrals like Chartres rose skyward, their architects used Fibonacci progressions to determine spire heights and window tracery, believing these proportions literally resonated with heavenly frequencies. Modern science now confirms what intuition long suggested. Fibonacci patterns emerge spontaneously in systems governed by simple growth rules. Computer simulations of plant evolution consistently generate Fibonacci-like spirals without any programmed instructions, suggesting the sequence is less a design than an inevitability, a mathematical attractor shaping everything from DNA molecules to spiral galaxies. This universality raises a tantalizing possibility that ancient builders didn't just imitate nature's aesthetics but intuited its underlying algorithms, crafting structures that didn't merely stand on the earth but grew from its logic. The legacy lives on in unexpected places. Stock market analysts use Fibonacci retracements to predict price swings, while contemporary architects like Le Corbusier codified the golden ratio into modernist design. Even our smartphones' screen dimensions adhere to the sequence, proving this ancient code still shapes our world. The next time you pass a sunflower or glance at a Greek temple, remember, you're not just seeing beauty. You're witnessing the silent grammar of the universe, a language written in numbers, whispered through time, and waiting always to be read anew. The four cardinal directions weren't just compass points to ancient builders, they were sacred axes connecting humanity to the cosmos, each bearing its own color, season, and spiritual significance. For the Navajo, the four sacred mountains define their world. Blanca Peak in the east representing dawn and white shell, Mount Taylor in the south symbolizing turquoise and midday, the San Francisco Peaks in the west linked to yellow abalone and sunset, and Hesperus Mountain in the north embodying darkness and black jet. These peaks aren't mere landmarks, they're pillars of a living cosmology, anchoring ceremonies where every song, sand painting, and Hogan door aligns with this fourfold symmetry. Half a world away, China's Feng Shui Luopan compass divides the world into 24 directions, but its core remains the cardinal four, each tied to an animal, element, and phase of life. East belongs to the azure dragon and spring's wooden growth, the south flames with the vermilion bird and summer's fire, the west shelters the white tiger and autumn's metallic harvest, while the north cradles the black tortoise, its watery depths mirroring winter's introspection. Temples like Beijing's Temple of Heaven were laid out along these axes, with emperors performing rituals at altars corresponding to each direction, ensuring harmony between earthly rule and celestial order. The Maya took this directional symbolism even further. Their world tree, the ceiba, stretched its roots and branches along the four paths, each associated with a color and a rain-bearing chalk deity. When they built cities like Tikal, pyramids were positioned to mark solstice sunrises and sunsets, but also to honor these directional gods, their stairways acting as conduits between realms. A ruler's throne might face east to invoke the sun's renewal, while burial chambers aligned west, mirroring the sun's descent into the underworld. Even their ball courts, like the massive arena at Chichen Itza, were oriented north-south, transforming a sport into a celestial metaphor where players reenacted the movement of stars. In Egypt, the four directions were realms of divine protection. The goddess Isis guarded the east where the sun reborn, Nephthys watched over the west, land of the dead, Neith presided over the south's life-giving Nile floods, and circuits shielded the north's fertile delta. Temples like Karnak were designed as microcosms of this ordered universe, with pylons marking thresholds between directions and statues, positioned so their shadows would touch specific points at equinoxes, weaving time and space into a single sacred fabric. The Celts, too, saw magic in the quarters. Their cross symbols, later co-opted by Christianity, originally represented the four festivals of Imbolc, Beltane, Lugnasad, and Samhain, each tied to a direction and a phase of the agricultural cycle. Standing stones like Scotland's Callanish align not just to solstices but to the four winds, with local legends claiming the stones were giants petrified mid-dance, forever turning with the seasons. What unites these traditions is the recognition that directionality wasn't passive, it was participatory. By aligning monuments to the four quarters, ancient cultures didn't just observe the world, they conversed with it, embedding their values into the very bones of the landscape. A Navajo hogan's east-facing door welcomed dawn's blessings, just as a Chinese palace's north-facing throne acknowledged the emperor's celestial mandate. These weren't arbitrary choices, they were acts of alignment, ensuring human endeavors resonated with the deeper rhythms of earth and sky. Modern architecture still echoes this wisdom, if unconsciously. City grids from Manhattan to Kyoto often follow cardinal lines, and even suburban homes tend to face south for sunlight, proving that the old language of direction still whispers beneath our concrete and steel. The next time you pause at a crossroads or glance at a compass, consider this: the four directions aren't just geography. They're the oldest map we have, one that doesn't just guide our bodies but once steered our souls. In the shadowed halls of Egypt's Temple of Horus at Edfu, priests didn't just perform rituals, they conducted celestial experiments. Clad in leopard skins, they would retreat to rooftop observatories, tracking Sirius's heliacal rising with Merkit instruments, their observations dictating when to plant crops or begin festivals. These weren't mere stargazers, they were scientist priests, wielding mathematics and mythology with equal fluency. The same duality thrived in Babylon, where cuneiform tablets reveal astrologers calculating Jupiter's movements to predict harvest yields and imperial fortunes, their celestial charts as precise as their prayers were poetic. What set these ancient scholars apart was their seamless fusion of roles. The Mayas, Akin, literally he of the sun, served as both astronomer and high priest, interpreting Venus cycles to time coronations and bloodletting ceremonies. At Angkor Wat, Brahmin priests used the temple's central tower as a gnomon, its shadow marking equinoxes for agricultural planning, while simultaneously symbolizing Mount Meru's connection to the heavens. This wasn't just interdisciplinary work, it was a worldview where measuring planetary positions and interpreting divine will were two sides of the same bronze astrolabe. The initiation rites guarding this knowledge were as rigorous as any modern doctoral program. Babylonian apprentice astrologers spent decades memorizing star catalogues and omen texts, progressing through 7 temple grades before earning the title. Letter 1E6 Dups Hachek Aa Enuma Anu Enlil, scribe of the celestial gods. In Egypt's House of Life, novices copied astronomical papyri in cryptic hieratic script, their training culminating in tests where they'd predict lunar eclipses or align obelisks using nothing but shadow ropes and intuition. Mistakes weren't merely academic. A misaligned temple could anger the gods, bringing famine or flood. Yet their greatest legacy lies in the monuments that outlived their names. The Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza, with its spiral staircase mimicking the shell of a conch, symbol of the Mayan wind god Kukulkan, demonstrates how sacred geometry encoded both spiritual and scientific truths. Similarly, the Nabtur of Nabtuplaya, a stone circle in the Sahara predating Stonehenge by a millennium, was likely built by cattle-herding astronomers who used it to mark the summer solstice and monsoon seasons, their survival depending on reading the stars as clearly as they read animal tracks. Modern archaeology is revealing just how sophisticated their methods were. Infrared scans of Babylonian tablets show erased calculations beneath final prophecies, proving they refined predictions through iterative mathematics. The Dendera zodiac, once dismissed as decorative, is now recognized as a sophisticated star map marking planetary nodes invisible without generations of recorded observations. These weren't guesses wrapped in mysticism. They were data-driven models, their spiritual framework simply the language of their time. The irony is that today's compartmentalized thinking struggles to reconcile their dual legacy. We marvel at Mayan eclipse tables accurate to seconds, but dismiss their associated blood sacrifices as primitive superstition. Yet perhaps their true genius lay in recognizing that the cosmos speaks in many tongues, through equations and epiphanies, numbers and numinosity. When a Babylonian priest traced Jupiter's path to declare the king's mandate from Marduk, or an Inca, Amata, wise one aligned Cusco's sect lines with the Pleiades' zenith, they were doing what all great scientists do, seeking patterns in chaos, whether they called those patterns gods or gravity. Their stones still whisper this unity. The next time you stand before an ancient monument, look beyond its grandeur, see the scratch marks where priests calibrated sightlines, the worn steps where initiates memorized star sequences, the hidden chambers where light and shadow performed their eternal dance. These weren't just builders, they were the bridge makers between earth and sky, their legacy not in the answers they left, but in the questions they dared to ask. Beneath the dense Cambodian jungle, where vines choke thousand-year-old stone, laser pulses fired from aircraft are rewriting history. LiDAR technology, light detection and ranging, has peeled back the green veil over Angkor Wat, revealing a sprawling metropolis where 900 years ago, canals, roads, and temples formed a perfect grid aligned to cardinal directions. But the real shock came when scans showed the entire urban plan mirrors the constellation Draco as it appeared in 10,500 BCE, echoing the same celestial obsession seen in Egypt's pyramids. This isn't just a lost city, it's a star map in stone, hidden until lasers exposed its secrets. From space, satellites paint an even broader picture. Infrared imaging has traced ley lines stretching hundreds of miles across Britain, their paths visible only from orbit. One such alignment connects Stonehenge to the peak of Mount Snowdon, then leaps across the Irish Sea to Ireland's Newgrange tomb, a straight-line mystery spanning land and water. Even more startling, Google Earth overlays reveal that the Great Pyramid's diagonal, if extended, intersects with the Nazca lines in Peru and Easter Island's Moe, forming a planetary-scale grid modern surveyors struggle to explain. Ground-penetrating radar adds another layer. Beneath Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, scans show chambers potentially dating back 12,000 years, their walls aligned to solstice sunrises long before agriculture supposedly began. In the Amazon, radar has uncovered geometric earthworks, vast circles and squares aligned to the winter solstice, proving rainforest civilizations manipulated landscapes on scales we're only beginning to grasp. Yet the most humbling discoveries come from combining old and new. When archaeologists fed Maya glyphs into AI, the algorithm decoded a lost weather prediction system using Venus cycles, knowledge the priests of Palenque encoded in temple alignments. Similarly, 3D modeling of the Great Pyramid's shafts shows they weren't just air vents but precise sightlines to Sirius and Orion, calibrated using a math we've only recently rediscovered. The irony is palpable. Drones, supercomputers, and satellites now confirm what ancient builders knew through intuition and naked eye observation, that the earth and sky are threads in the same vast tapestry. With every pixelated scan and algorithmic breakthrough, we're not just uncovering their world, we're learning to see through their eyes, where a temple wasn't just a building, but a lens focusing heaven's light onto human hands. For every awe-inspiring alignment connecting ancient monuments to celestial events, there's a skeptic ready to point out the law of large numbers. With enough structures built over millennia, some are bound to line up with the stars purely by accident. Take the so-called Lay of the Old Straight Track in Britain, where enthusiasts draw lines connecting medieval churches, Bronze Age barrows, and Neolithic standing stones. Critics counter that in a landscape as densely packed with ancient sites as England, drawing straight lines between random points is statistically inevitable, like connecting dots in a cosmic game of join the dots. Even the famous Orion correlation at Giza has its detractors, who note that the pyramid spacing doesn't perfectly mirror the constellation stars, and that the Nile's curve hardly matches the Milky Way's sweep with photographic precision. Yet chance alone struggles to explain the sheer volume of precise correlations. When you find solar alignments at Newgrange, Abu Simbel, and Machu Picchu cultures separated by oceans and centuries, all marking solstices with doorways or light shafts accurate to within minutes of arc, coincidence starts to feel like a flimsy excuse. It's the difference between finding one watch in a desert and declaring it random, versus uncovering a dozen synchronized timepieces buried in strategic locations worldwide. The statistical improbability compounds when alignments encode advanced mathematics, like the Great Pyramid's pi ratio or Angkor Wat's fractal dimensions, features unlikely to emerge from trial and error. Alternative theories offer middle ground. Some propose that natural landmarks, mountain peaks, river bends, or distinctive rock formations served as initial alignment markers, with later builders deliberately echoing these organic geometries. The zigzagging layout of Teotihuacan's Avenue of the Dead, for instance, may follow an ancient stream bed, while the Nazca Line's trajectories align with underground water channels. This modified serendipity theory suggests early humans noticed meaningful patterns in nature, a cleft in a cliff that framed the winter solstice sunrise, or a hill that aligned with Venus's extreme northern setting, then formalized these observations into constructed alignments. The most compelling counterarguments come from experimental archaeology, when researchers tasked volunteers with building stone circles using only rudimentary tools. The results were wildly inconsistent, nothing like the precision of Stonehenge or Callanish. Similarly, computer simulations modeling random monument placement show that while some minor alignments occur by chance, the concentration of high-accuracy celestial correlations seen at sites like Chichen Itza or Karnak is statistically anomalous. Even accounting for survivorship bias, the fact that only the most enduring structures remain, the data skews heavily toward intentional design. At the heart of the debate lies a deeper philosophical divide. Do we underestimate ancient ingenuity by dismissing alignments as coincidence, or overestimate it by projecting modern scientific frameworks onto pre-industrial cultures? Perhaps the truth bridges both views. The Maya's Venus tables or Egypt's star clocks prove deliberate observation, while the occasional alignment, like Boston's modern skyscrapers lining up with sunset on a specific date, reminds us that patterns can emerge unintentionally. What's undeniable is that this tension drives discovery. Every contested alignment pushes researchers to refine their tools, whether it's using 3D modeling to test sightlines or applying Bayesian statistics to weigh intentionality. The stones themselves rarely offer definitive answers, but they provoke the right questions. When we stand at the center of a stone circle or trace the angle of a pyramid slope, we're not just measuring alignments, we're measuring our own assumptions about the past. And sometimes the most illuminating discoveries come not from proving who's right, but from realizing how much we've yet to learn. To stand in the heart of Stonehenge at dawn on the summer solstice is to witness more than a clever astronomical alignment. It's to feel the weight of centuries of devotion pressing in around you. The stones don't merely mark where the sun rises. They thrum with the echoes of countless pilgrims who came here not to calculate, but to commune. This duality, the fusion of precision and piety, lies at the core of humanity's oldest monuments. The Maya didn't just build El Castillo to track equinoxes. They carved feathered serpents into its steps, ensuring the celestial event would animate their gods. The Egyptians didn't simply orient temples to Sirius for timekeeping. They believed the star's first gleam at dawn carried the soul of Isis, flooding sacred chambers with divine presence. These cultures saw no conflict between measurement and mysticism. To them, the cosmos was alive, and alignments were how they whispered back. Consider the spiritual engineering of India's Brihadiswara temple, where the central tower's shadow never touches the ground at noon, a feat achieved through exacting solar calculations. But the architects didn't stop there. They positioned the shrine so that during the annual festival of Mahashivaratri, moonlight would travel through a sequence of precisely aligned halls to illuminate the innermost sanctum's lingam. This wasn't just astronomy, it was alchemy, transforming moonlight into a liquid silver blessing. Similarly, in Peru, the Inca carved rock outcrops at Machu Picchu to catch the solstice sun, but they also shaped stones to mimic the sacred peaks behind them, blending celestial and terrestrial reverence into a single act of worship. The sacred dimension of these alignments often reveals itself in the smallest details. At Ireland's Newgrange, the solstice light doesn't just enter the tomb, it follows a zigzagging path carved into the stone, a motif found in Neolithic art across Europe representing the veil between worlds. In Japan, Ai's grand shrine's ritual rebuilding every 20 years isn't just maintenance. It's a reenactment of the cosmic cycle of death and rebirth, with each reconstruction aligning to new celestial markers. Even the seemingly practical Nazca lines, when walked as ritual paths, induce altered states of consciousness through their dizzying scale and spiral designs, a form of geometric transcendence. What modern science dismisses as superstition often proves to be sophisticated psycho-spiritual technology. Studies at Malta's hypogeum show its resonant chambers amplify frequencies that stimulate theta brainwaves, inducing meditative states. The Mayas' vision serpent motifs at Palenque align with windows where Venus would appear during ceremonies, suggesting they timed hallucinogenic rituals to coincide with planetary alignments, weaving astronomy into shamanic practice. These weren't crude attempts to control the gods, they were experiments in harmonizing human consciousness with cosmic rhythms. The loss of this unified worldview carries consequences. Where ancient cultures saw a universe singing in geometric harmony, from the spiral of galaxies to the helix of Dine, we've fractured reality into sterile binaries, sacred versus scientific, measurable versus mystical. Yet echoes persist. Pilgrims still gather at solstice alignments, not with theodolites but with open hearts. Astrophysicists now speak of the anthropic principle, the eerie fine-tuning of universal constants that allow life to exist in terms that sound remarkably like the old idea of a purposeful cosmos. The stones remember what we've forgotten, that every alignment is a bridge not just between earth and sky, but between the quantifiable and the ineffable. To walk these ancient pathways is to tread a seam in reality itself, where measurement and meaning, for a fleeting moment, become one. From the pyramids of Giza to the towering stones of Karnak, these ancient alignments whisper a truth we're only beginning to hear. Our ancestors didn't just build monuments, they engineered conversations with the cosmos. Each solstice marker, each celestial corridor, is a fragment of a lost language, one that wove together the precision of mathematics with the poetry of the stars. Think of the Maya, who painted Venus's dance across temple walls not merely as data, but as divine choreography, or the Neolithic farmers who hauled 20-ton slabs across Salisbury Plain to catch the midsummer sunrise like a ritual frozen in stone. These weren't separate disciplines: astronomy, geometry, devotion, but threads of the same tapestry, a world view where measuring the heavens was as sacred as praying to them. What's humbling isn't just their knowledge, but their humility. Without satellites or calculators, they acknowledged forces we've since relegated to myth: Earth's subtle energies. The moon's pull on both tides and consciousness, the way certain rock formations seem to hum beneath your fingertips. Modern science now edges toward these truths, studying how quartz-rich stones at Avebury amplify electromagnetic frequencies, or how the hypogeum's frequencies alter brain waves. Yet for all our technology, we've lost the holistic vision that saw a temple not as a building, but as a tuning fork, vibrating in harmony with land and sky. This isn't about romanticizing the past. The builders of Angkor Wat or Teotihuacan were as pragmatic as they were profound. Their alignments fed cities by predicting monsoons, guided travelers across trackless seas, and stabilized societies through shared celestial rituals. But they also left us a challenge to see beyond our fragmented modern lens, where science and spirituality stand divided. When a Navajo elder traces the constellation of the hero twins across a hogan's roof, or a Benedictine monk charts Easter's date by lunar cycles, they're keeping alive a truth etched into humanity's oldest stones: that the universe speaks in patterns, and to understand them is to remember our place within something vast and sacred. So the next time you watch a sunrise through a standing stone's notch, or notice how a cathedral's stained glass ignites at equinox, pause. You're not just observing an ancient trick of light. You're stepping into a conversation millennia in the making, one where the very rocks urge us to lift our gaze not just to the stars, but to the connections we've forgotten. The real mystery isn't whether these alignments were intentional, but why their message feels so urgent now. Perhaps in an age of screens and satellites, we're finally ready to listen. The stones have been waiting, and as the shadows lengthen across another solstice, they still have so much to